Welcome to another edition of Coffee with the Mayor. Of course, I'm Mayor Lou Thurston, and today I have two special guests joining me today. And then first one is the City of Hillsboro's new interim city administrator, Michael Webb. Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
And sitting beside him is a man that wears multiple hats as well, and he is also doing an interim city administrator gig while working also for the League of Kansas Municipalities. And I'd like to welcome John Deardoff here today. John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. It's great opportunity to be here with you.
So the reason that both of you happen to be sitting all these years of experience in the city administration business is we are in the midst of a search for a new city administrator. And Michael is here to help carry us through that search period until we find the next city administrator. And John is actually leading the team that is searching for said administrator. And so first of all, I'd like to welcome you, but also like to give you an opportunity to tell the folks a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, a little of your background. We don't have time in this episode to cover the entirety of your experience. Maybe give us a little bit of things that people would like to know about you. Michael,
Sure.
We'll start with you.
Well, great. So Michael Webb, I've been in the city management business about 36 years. Started my career in Texas, went to school in Texas, so about halfway through there, moved up to Kansas around 2004,
Okay.
and I've been serving a number of communities here in the Kansas area. I have my master's of public administration at the University of Texas.
The mean green, huh?
The mean green,
Nice.
yes, sir.
All right. John?
John Deardoff, and I'm a 40-year city manager veteran, all in Kansas. I served as city manager in Sterling, small community, and then Dodge City for about 12 years, and then 15 years out of Hutchinson, and retired there at about 2019. And I knew when I retired, I wasn't going to just be done,
Right.
but I was kind of done with the daily grind
Sure.
of the job. And so I got into doing some searches with a partner, helping cities find city managers, city administrators. Then I did a little interim work at the league as the executive director there, started talking to them about their program because we were competing. We worked out a partnership where I'm working with them on all their searches now. And as you said earlier, I'm currently about to finish an interim in Kingman. I've done about 4 or 5 of those, and they've been really interesting, all in small communities. And a lot of it's just trying to help them, like with Michael here, just, bridge that gap between the old and the new person coming in. So appreciate the opportunity to work with Hillsboro. Looking forward to our meeting tonight to talk about who might be the next administrator here in Hillsboro.
Excellent. Just as a point of reference, you mentioned that you had done this prior to your engagement with the league. You were the ones that helped us find Matt Stiles.
Correct.
We engaged your firm back in that time, and you helped us find Matt Stiles, which was a very good situation for Hillsboro. So we know that you'll help us, I'm certain, find that next person. We always start off each episode with something we call the Mayor's Mugshots. And that's really an opportunity to talk about the coffee with the mayor piece. Today we kind of did the choosing for you. So what I'm going to do is just switch it up a little bit, and let's not just describe what's in your mug today, but let's talk about if you were choosing, what would be in your mug. How's that? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
And I'm pretty easy. And my favorite go-to coffee is the senior coffee at McDonald's. No
Okay.
matter where it's at. It's 87 cents everywhere.
Nice.
And it's a dark black, and it's good coffee. And we look at all the fancy coffee places, and I'm just a senior discount guy at McDonald's. That's me. But I do like a Starbucks every now and then.
Okay. Very good.
Well, I've learned something new today. I get coffee from McDonald's. I didn't know there was a senior.
Just say senior
Yes,
coffee.
now I know. So
That's a big part of what we hope to accomplish with this podcast is education.
There we
So
go.
maybe we've helped a few other seniors,
There you go.
besides just you and me.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Most of the time, I probably am just a traditional coffee drinker. I drink coffee from even the local convenience stores. But I'd have to put a little bit of plug out there for Guatemalan coffee. As you both know, I do mission trips down to Guatemala,
Right.
and they produce a lot of coffee.
Yes, they do.
And they make some really nice blends. So if you're going to try something, try a good Guatemalan roast and see if you enjoy it.
Very good. I don't know. I do know that they have some at Rhubarb, I believe.
Today was a Guatemala blend.
It was.
What?
Well, looky
It's-
there. How success.
That's why I said when I first opened, I said, that's a really good cup of coffee.
There you
So,
go. Now we know.
I do like this.
Now we know. And as the mayor always says, his coffee is always coffee flavored coffee. I'm not really into any kind of specialty flavors and additives and whatever. It's black coffee, and usually whatever's coming out of the drip pot there at Rhubarb is good for me. Let's get into a little bit about why you guys are here, about some of the background, because again, you guys have such a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to this particular business. And so, I guess the first question I'd have for whoever wants to jump in and feel free, you guys can tag team, you can take turns, however you want to do it. But for residents or citizens who may not be familiar what the city administrator does on a day-to-day basis, what the responsibilities are, and how does the role shape the direction and priorities of a community like Hillsboro?
I'll let my senior start first.
Well,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting because having done this for 40 years and, had my kids grow up in the high school, and they said, what's your dad do? Well, he's a city manager. What's that? What's he do? And it's something that not very many people really know about unless they do a little bit of work. It's a really interesting profession in that, you get to touch so many different things on a daily basis. It's not just one thing every day, from loud dogs in a neighborhood to, an engineering contract for a road project, and just every day's different. The other side of that is, and I've always enjoyed in my career working with citizens. Occasionally there's a few that may not be as fun to work with, but I always like trying to help solve problems for them. And the city manager, administrator, you have the opportunity to do that a lot. And your main role is really to implement the policies and the direction that the elected body has given at a meeting or whatever.
So I think one of the big roles for city managers, administrators, is how do you take 5, 6, 8, how many people are on your council, and they each come in. When they come there, they generally have different opinions, right? Things that are important to them, maybe problems they think they have different visions. And I kind of use the hourglass person, right? So I got this hourglass, and I've got all this stuff going on, and I have to figure out how to bring all that together in a common vision that the entire council can get around. And out of that comes generally, a vision plan or some type of plan, such as y'all have done very well with your last city manager, a strategic plan that then helps guide the work, and it helps us as managers and administrators to be able to go to the staff and say, okay, well, here's our key points. Here's the things we need to work on. How is what we're doing here leading towards our strategic plan? And that's really fulfilling when you can use a document like that and get there and find it. And of course, in between, there's all the loud dogs, the broken water main, the potholes, all the things that everybody sees and gets concerned about.
Right.
But generally, it's all the stuff they don't see. We spend a lot of time on. Probably lose some sleep on.
So I like your analogy of the hourglass. One that I always used was, and learned early in my career, is that as a manager administrator, you're juggling all these glass balls, just this, and that. And you just got to know which ones not to drop.
Right.
And that was always something that kind of stuck with me. And throughout my career, you're always, juggling different things, and you just got to know which ones are more important than maybe some of the others that can wait. So.
So as a search continues, looking for our next full-time city administrator, what are the qualities of leadership or the traits, if you will, that you guys would say would be the most important for Hillsboro? I think you both have a bit of knowledge about Hillsboro now, maybe not a ton, but a bit. How are you going to work to help us make sure we get the right fit? And I guess that part's more addressed to John, you know.
I mean, one of the things just personally that I think in a small community is somebody that's approachable and has an accessible leadership presence. All the nuts and bolts of, you have staff and you have all these department heads that know the inner workings of the city, but you got to have that person that relates to the community, relates to the governing body. And that's really all about attitude and your leadership presence. Boy, it's in this business we're in now, doing the search, it's sometimes hard to find. And you got to dig deep to find that. But that's one of the things that I always look at is just this is he approachable? He or she approachable? What's their leadership style, and somebody that really wants to be out there working with the community.
And I would say just from recruiting people to work for our organizations, I think probably as this process goes and you get near the end, what that three candidates or four, you're going to find they all have the skill set to do the job. And I think it's what John's been doing. But how will they fit in this community, right? And one question I always used to like to ask candidates, especially department heads, et cetera, hiring, is why Hillsboro? Why do they want to be in your community to work, right? Why do they want to be here? They want to be here just because it's a spot they want to stop at, or not that you're going to hire somebody that's going to be here for 20 years, but why here? Why Hillsboro? They could have gone to Kingman. They could have gone to some other,
Sure.
So why do they want to be here? And I think I always find that's an important question that I ask people when I hire a particular community I'm working. Why do you want to be here? Some are well prepared and they have good, solid reasons, and some never thought about it, right? And I think it's important.
Yeah, that's a little red flag when they say, "Well, I haven't really thought about it."
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I think those are the important things. You have. Again, I've only been here a few weeks. You have a solid staff. That's not, in my opinion, not even in question. You got a great town. You got plenty of opportunity. This is great. Again, I use your strategic plan. It will allow the next person coming in a lot of groundwork that, quite honestly, you don't always get. Oftentimes, having been both interim and walked in to some places, sometimes you find that it's a challenge just to get out the door. And I think you all are well positioned. But I have to give some hats off to Matt. He did I think a great job getting prepared for the next person.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a trait when you talk about a good manager, is that's what they should be working towards, right? Is not themselves, but the next person. And
Right.
I think that's
Set the table for the next person.
That's what I like to say. I've said it many times. I know Callie's heard it enough, but I feel like we have set the table for who's next to come in and elevate, because we never want to stay status quo. We're always looking to grow. That growth can cover a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean growth in population or growth in infrastructure. It's growth in how we approach serving citizens. And, I feel like we have done a pretty good job of making it more efficient. That's the word I'm looking for. I think we have figured out ways to do more with less, and we're always looking to do it the most efficient and effective way. And, for myself, it's also looking at some of the things and both of you have been here, the things that you uncover from your past, your predecessors, maybe some things that were done for expedience instead of correctly, right? And you've got to fix those things. And my attitude is always, and it's probably something I got from my grandfather, is just do it right the first time. And then, you don't have to apologize or worry so much about what the future is going to hold. There's always natural wear and tear, natural evolutions of things. But if you start with a solid base, you're a lot better off. Transitions in leadership often present some unique challenges. When you think about where Hillsboro is at the moment, what opportunities do you see for potential candidates, for residents, and for the community's future.
Well, again, it's not a long time discussing, but I've tried to take the opportunity to drive around every day and just go see things. And I mean, I think I told you when I went out to your park system.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I would have loved to have had a park system like you have, right? Whether it's the golf course or the sports fields, the pool, all those kind of amenities. But I think your downtown has a lot of opportunities still to be developed between the college and again some of the community culture that seems to be out there, some of your businesses that are kind of local developed here. I mean, I see a very similar thing. It needs investment in your downtown.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything nobody else has seen.
Right? No,
but I think you have
there.
lots of opportunities,
Yeah.
right? I mean, whether it's some small business opportunities, whether it's the second story housing opportunities. We're doing the city's doing a mural program that I think there with the bowling alley.
Right.
That's an unusual and unique opportunity.
Isn't it though?
I mean, some will probably see it one way and some the other. But I mean, I can't think of another community that owns a bowling alley that I've ever been around.
Well, you can check that box,
Check
Mike.
that box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can say I've managed a bowling alley now.
And so I think the person coming in doesn't, I went into a community once, literally we had people that were under KPI investigations and financial problems and insurance. It took us 3 or 4 years just to fix the base financials, right? Just to say, okay, we don't have to go borrow money to make payroll. I mean, we literally were doing that, right? So here, when they walk in, as you said, the foundation's solid, right? This is not built on sand here, right? You got a solid foundation. A lot of the pillars are in place. It's just continuing to build on those. So I think the next candidate has some great opportunities around, again, the downtown, the community support that's here, the businesses you have here, they're working hard. I think y'all are in a good place.
Yeah, and I would make a comment. Part of this search process, and Mary, you'll know, is developing a candidate profile, the kind of candidates you're looking for. And so we did the survey, and each of the council members filled it out, and you come up with kind of the ideal candidate profile. And it's interesting that, a couple of those things were housing and downtown development, economic development, and partnerships. And I read the strategic plan, and it talks about that. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was the partnerships with other entities, the school district and the college, college is a big asset to this community. And so I think you guys have developed some strong relationships there. And I think that's something the new person is going to have to continue to work on, because that's so important. But it's interesting because one of the things I've noted here on the job posting was something that you all mentioned to me was approachable and accessible leadership. And I mentioned that earlier because that's one of the things that I truly believe in. Collaborative was something that was commented on. Somebody mentioned you don't need be the smartest person in the room, but you got to know how to have the right people in the room with you.
No, for sure.
And do a lot more listening than talking. So, yeah.
I'm always amazed at how much people assume the mayor knows or should know. And I just smile and say, I don't know much, but I know who to call.
Yeah, that's
right. I know who to go to
to
get the answers that are required.
And you're right. Sometimes it's also, I think, there's an assumption, not just of the mayor, but of staff, of what we can and can't do. I was in a city, and the post office building got ran into, and so they had to close the post office because. And so
what are you going to do about that?
I got blamed first for closing the post office. And when it reopened, these people came and said, we want to thank the city manager. You did such a great job getting the post office open. Like, I think it didn't have anything to do with either side.
Right.
Right. Sometimes it's funny what the assumption is that we do have
for sure.
Control over or management of. And it's not always the fact that we do.
So. Right.
I'm just going to throw in a little something that Callie hasn't put in our script, and because this has been something that's just been extremely near and dear to me lately, and that's this concept of home rule. You're inferring that, what is it that we should be making decisions on, and what is it we should not? It's amazing to me how much state government feels that they have a much more intimate knowledge of what's going on in Hillsboro, Kansas than apparently any of us that live here and work here do. And I just, I'm just sitting here shaking my head. I've had conversations with our local legislators, and I felt like, unfortunately, those were somewhat disingenuous, number one. But number two, at the end of the day, when it comes to what does this community need and how are we going to resource that need, those decisions are much better left here. But that again is making it more challenging for people in your profession. The legislature is trying to also do your job.
I would just comment, going back on my 40-year career, how the legislature's always been kind of looking at cities and how they can control our spending issues, going back when they took away revenue sharing, and you remember all of that. Okay, then the tax lid, and we all kind of learned to live with that. In this year's session, I think they thought they were really going to get something done, and then they never really did. And it's just interesting how politically we talk about property tax, and boy, we'll take care of it for you people. But the local community should be the ones deciding what level of services they want, what amenities they want, and be willing to pay for it.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's all about the service.
Yeah.
It's really about the service.
And again, back to what you said, what do people expect from local government? Obviously, the city of Wichita is not going to end up running the alley in Wichita, right? Or in Hutch or in Salina.
Right.
They're not going to run a bowling alley, right? That's just not happening. But in a small community, to preserve an amenity that people really wanted, the community really wanted, the city kind of had to step up into that and incorporate that very unusual, opportunity into our city works. Part of our Parks and Rec now. The last thing I'll say regarding that. A couple years ago, I had a third grader ask me the most intuitive question I've ever had as a mayor. I spoke to the third graders and it's Q&A, and one of the little girl raised her hand. She goes, "When you were elected mayor for the first time, were you scared?" And I thought,
question.
It was an awesome question, and I really appreciated that. And when I was elected mayor, I was not scared, because I knew I had an extremely experienced city administrator.
Yeah.
3 weeks after I took my oath of office, Larry and I are up in Topeka, and he ends up collapsing on the steps of the Capitol, and turns out he's got stage 4 kidney cancer. And I told that little girl, then I was scared.
Yeah,
I got scared a little bit. So I did have a gentleman by the name of Don Ozenbaugh step in, and it was more to help kind of keep me propped up and keep me off the floor than anything else. But very much appreciated that role that Interim provides, during those times of disruption. And
I'll just say to that, I remember my first city manager's job. And I was really excited until I said yes,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went, well, I don't have somebody else that I can talk to, manager,
Right.
And when you get to the city manager, who do you go to? And there's not really that person there. You can't say, well, it was their decision, or it's it's you. As Truman said, the buck stops here, right?
Yep.
But I'll tell you what's great about this profession is people that you can call, that
Mm-hmm.
like John and others, or Matt or Webb.
Sure.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
great profession because of the connections, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
you talked about earlier. We're such a connected group of people, and the new person coming in, hopefully understands that too, and that they have a whole resource available to them through the Kansas Association of City Manager, through the League, through other organizations, through KPP, all these
Mhm.
resources that are there, that again, they don't have to know all those answers and be expected to do everything day one, right? They have a whole lot of support in this profession.
Yeah,
right?
right.
That's what makes this profession, I think, unique to somebody else. Somebody has an idea, we share. It's not a competition, right? It's not that, hey, I've got the bigger, better thing. I'm gonna hold it to myself because I want to sell it for
Yeah,
millions of dollars. Right? We're like, hey, we did this thing, it worked out. You're not checking out over there.
It's interesting you say that because that was something Larry Payne used to say all the time. Wheel not invented here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then Matt was more of the road guy. You know what road is, rip off and duplicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do it.
Yeah.
It's part of the business.
That's that's a good thing. And organized crime folks have La Cosa Nostra, but you guys have ICMA.
Yeah.
That's it's a great network.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's well, I think that about covers what we wanted to talk about. But before we wrap up an episode of Coffee with the Mayor, we always have some kind of unique thing that Callie comes up with. She's brought back out her hot takes jar. And so what we're going to do is every one of us is going to get an opportunity to remove a hot take from the jar, read it, and then do your best to answer it. Michael,
Pressure.
we're going to put the pressure right here, buddy.
Okay. We're used to that.
Don't blow it. Don't blow it.
If you could create a new holiday, what would it celebrate and why? Wow, that's some deep thinking.
It is some deep thinking. We don't play in the shallow end of the pool here in Hillsboro.
So we kind of have this, but we don't really, I don't think, celebrate it. And I would say we should celebrate giving. We learn all about finances. We've learned how to save. We learn how to do these things. We're not very well taught how to give, right? And to give freely, right? So I guess if I could have a holiday, it would be to celebrate giving.
Wow, that's pretty impressive there.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. All right, John,
Oh, man.
your turn, sir.
Afraid this is going to be. Have you ever had a paranormal or unexplainable experience? Spill. I don't know that I can.
Driving off Kansas at about 2 a.m, there's something out there. So.
Well, that's a tough one. I just don't know that I can come up with anything. I've had. Well, I guess what I'll think about is I have a reoccurring dream, and I guess that's kind of paranormal, maybe. But anyway, and a reoccurring dream, and it happens is going back to college. And I don't know when my classes are, and I don't know where, and I'm panicking, and I finally walking around, and I'm missing this class, and I'm missing all these classes. I go to the register of whatever and see if I get my schedule, and it's crazy. I've had that more than several times, and other people maybe have too.
And I'm not sure, am I going to get to graduate then? And then I go in this class and the teacher's like, where have you been? That's 8 weeks into the semester.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah.
Now I'll probably have it all the time again. But
I had that dream as well, and it was I had missed all these classes, and it came time for the final.
yeah.
And I would just remember sitting there going, boy, I hope I can fake my way through this test. They could tell you make it.
Boy.
Okay, what's the craziest conspiracy theory you've heard? Well, I've heard a few. I'm kind of an amateur historian. I love history, and I certainly love political history. And we've had more than our share of conspiracies. The one that I guess is most memorable to me because it was some of the earliest memories I have was, of course, the JFK assassination. I can remember it. I was in kindergarten. We got to watch the funeral, actually. My mother was pregnant at the time. When she heard the news that Kennedy had been assassinated, she was in the kitchen. She was at home. She was at the very end of her pregnancy. She was off work already. She slipped and fell and went into labor. And my sister was born the next day. So she was born on 23rd of November, 1963.
Great story.
Yeah. So, I always had it in my mind that it was this far distance, in terms of where the shot came from, out of the school book depository. And then I saw the distance and I'm going, that isn't that far. You know, that
Yeah.
isn't that far, especially for somebody using a center fire rifle. Some of those conspiracies, though, have just continued to roil and boil. And Bugliosi
Oh, yeah.
from Los Angeles, he wrote the book, supposedly definitive, 1,000-some pages of about it, you know, and concluded that Oswald acted alone. And there are still those of us that I don't know if that's the truth or not the truth. And I'm happen to be reading a book about Lyndon Johnson right now,
Yeah.
and about his ascent. We're just coming to the Dallas point of where this whole thing transpired. You think about the 1960 election and some of the discrepancies that were had in the night. You know, we talk about most recently the Trump-Biden election. You know, but honestly, in 1960, I think there was some, you could probably go out and have found some things that might have changed history,
Yeah.
you know, in that time. So that's probably the craziest conspiracy, you know, that because it just can't seem to go away.
You know, the JFK, I was a freshman in college and I wasn't the best student at that point in time. And so we had this guy come to campus, and it was for the community, but the college. And he 2 nights in a row, he did a story on the conspiracy. And so we went one night because I had to go. I went back the second night. Nobody else did in the class. I was so intrigued by this. It really got me thinking about it. And this guy was perfect, but he was all about the conspiracy and he had it all figured out. And I don't know where I'm at on that, but I like reading about it. Sad piece of history, but it's memorable. Yeah.
You know, people, I would say this, having grown up in that area, it's really an excellent museum because they take the traditional view, but they have all the various conspiracies kind of at the end of that now. They've really done some upgrades in the past decade or so, and brought in some of the newer information that's been released. And it is it is really a great museum to go to. You need a few hours to go through it properly.
But you know, when you think about it, that and then subsequent history with Watergate, and then of course up to more modern times, you think about those things and that uncertainty that was created through those conspiracy theories, what it's done to people's trust in government.
Exactly.
You know, we're still dealing with it, and it just seems to, get harder and harder. That's why obviously we're trying to do things that create as much transparency and as much, we're trying to communicate as effectively and openly as we can. But it's a challenge. I mean, there's just so much noise out there in the advent of the internet, the World Wide Web, and the amount of information, that gets on there. It just competes with what we believe to be the truth. It just makes it tough. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. I hope that everybody from Hillsboro that watches this understands that we've engaged the best and most experienced help we could get during this transition time. I'm so happy that you were able to make this work, from a timing standpoint, because I know both of you have busy schedules. So thanks for doing that today. Nathan's Eberline's been on here before, but maybe you would like to plug the league. John, how people can connect with the league?
Yeah, the league, League of Municipalities is really a great resource for cities, and it always has been. Mainly we think of them as a legislative side of things, keeping track for us, and that's very important because most of these small communities don't have lobbyists. But there's also a lot of other things the league does: training opportunities, open records, those kind of things. But one thing I think we do is, because I'm involved in it probably, is the LEAPS, and it's their search program for city managers and administrators. And the league is very inexpensive compared to the big firms.
True.
And our market is really the smaller cities that really don't want to spend 30 grand to have a search firm come in. And so that's kind of been our niche. And I think I brought a little bit of value to that process just because of my experience as a city manager. And so we love to work with small cities, and hopefully we'll continue to do that.
Michael, anything you'd like to plug? I mean, actually, I think this is important to mention. You talked about giving. You also talked about how you give back, which is through, your ministries down in Guatemala. Is there anything there that you'd like to plug?
Well,
Because I'm going to give you an opportunity.
well, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been to Guatemala a number of times, about 10 or 11 times. We've worked with a couple of different organizations, most recently Mission Guatemala, which is a lot of it's around medical
Mhm.
type mission, sense of having space and education, right? So schools there, as you know, pretty much after sixth grade or so, everything after that's kind of extra, and so just trying to work with those communities, and they're such a happy group of people. I mean, I've never been around people so happy. From our standpoint, we think they have so little, but community's important to them, right? And again, it kind of tied back to community is so important.
So this organization, is there a way that people could learn more about it?
Sure, I think if they just type in Mission Guatemala,
Okay.
it was founded by a Methodist minister. He adopted 2 children from Guatemala. He's
Okay.
from Indiana, I believe, originally. The other group was called ODEAM, which is the Organization for the Development of the Indigenous Mayan. So the area we work in is the Mayan community. There's a lot of history if anybody wants to research it. I mean, you often hear about the Mayan and the Mayan group, but just the culture and things, there's a lot of great information. The other thing I would just add to people that are watching this, that are here, feel free to come by and say hello. A lady the other day walked in the office and I think talked to Callie, and where's he from? And she knew Michael Webb from another city, and where'd you grow up and what'd you do? We just had a nice talk, right? So I'm happy to have those conversations with people, and again, you'll probably see me out walking around, walking through the park, walking downtown.
Maybe out on the golf course.
I hope to get out on the golf course this week. That's one of my goals.
There you go.
Where I can actually play golf,
Right.
not just look at it. So if people they want to know more, I'm here and I'm happy to talk to them. So I probably get accused of talking too much more than not enough.
Well, there you go. Well, I would concur that you are a very approachable person, and so I would definitely encourage anybody, any residents, any citizens that want to come down and meet Michael, will just please come on down. Of course, you can always come in when we're having our city council meetings, which is the first and third Tuesdays of every month, right here in this room at 4:00. If you can't make it in person, you can always Zoom in, see what's going on. But as the process moves forward, I would encourage people to attend meetings, to watch meetings via Zoom, if they're interested in this process as it plays out, as we look and find our next administrator. Get involved. I mean, let us hear from you if you have an opinion or something you would like to say. As always, you can find Coffee with the Mayor on our YouTube channel and also on Spotify. Callie's got us up on Spotify. And make sure that you can subscribe. You can hit the likes button. We'd love to know that you're watching, and so we'd appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. This is going to wrap it up for another edition of Coffee with the Mayor. We'll keep you updated, and you stay caffeinated. Thanks again.